and we will be better for each other. And we're not without pain. People are going to die. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to hurt each other. This is going to happen. This is life. We're flawed. We're going to fumble. But we can be better. And I think the key thing is like, as we go through all this stuff, it's like, well, I can be better. I can be better than whoever I was yesterday. And then I can be better than the person I was today, tomorrow, and I'll just keep raising. And some days I'm going to feel like I'm falling behind and I fell back 10 steps and I'm 10 steps behind all the growth that I thought I did. But you don't even know if that's true. It just feels that way.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Maybe it's your first time. Maybe it's your last time. Hopefully not. Evan and I are just getting into it today. We're doing another Not So Serious. We've been doing this recently. We've just been jumping into it. We're like, we had a good talk before this. Plenty of time to figure out something to talk about. But, being good friends, we just got into our own thing and we're like, well, let's not, we didn't necessarily say this, but like, let's not worry about what this is. Let's just let that be and let's get into it and let's see what happens. I think there's a lot, there's always a lot to say, even from what we talked about. I'm not sure how that's going to play a part into this, but I do feel like it probably will have its place somewhere. Something is interesting for me. I'll just throw this out there. Maybe you can play with this one, but the start of the year, not that I made any resolutions about anything I was going to do, but, I come into every year with a bit of a plan. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what my year is about. And I always find that it's too much. Like, I'm not going to be able to do all of it. And I start to realize that pretty quickly, but I get some of it done really well and some of it gets put to the side. So, this is what I found starting in this new year. And one of the big things, like I have certain goals and things that I want to achieve this year. And, they're all pretty clear, I think, as far as what I know what I want. One of my big goals is to get into motorcycle adventure riding. I'm getting a lot more experience with that. I've been really kind of preparing myself to go on these adventures. And when I started this journey of motorcycle adventuring, I had this vision of going to the Yukon in Alaska. And last summer I was like, oh, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can pull it off. And certain things didn't really work out. But since then to now, which has been, really probably about 4, 5, 6 months maybe of time to think and decompress about, things that were not last summer, I started to realize I'm not really prepared for a trip that big. I'm not really experienced as I'd like to think that I am. And I'm not saying that I couldn't do it, but something that I've begun to kind of look at a little bit more is like, well, instead of looking at this, like, I got to get it all done now. Like, that's kind of how I was looking at it, almost like a sprint. Like, it all just has to happen now, because if it doesn't happen now, maybe it'll never happen. That's kind of the mindset I had. But I've started to realize there's a lot of things that are like more like a marathon, and they're not just like a marathon. They're like training for a marathon. And if you were to just jump into a full-on marathon without any training, without any preparation, yeah, there's a chance that you would finish. There's also a chance you wouldn't, and it's pretty high. And also the chance that you would win and be successful and have a good time doing it, and you wouldn't like have all the worst things happen to you, it's a lot lower if you're not prepared for it. And so I've been looking at everything a little bit like this, is like preparing for that. And I stumbled across this video. I don't know who the guy was, but he was talking about this. Like, he's like, even with finances, he's like, finances are the same as preparing for a marathon. It's like, you got to remember, you have all these bad habits in place. You've been spending too much money. You haven't been saving. You've been racking up debt. You've been doing things when you shouldn't be doing them and not doing things when you should be doing them, whatever. And I was thinking about this. I was like, so many things are like that. There's all these little things that we need to do. And what I've had to learn, I'd say over the last 6 months, is a lot about patience, is to go, okay, what can I do in the meantime to get myself ready for this big vision that I have? And I'm not saying that I'm putting it off, but I've started to realize, I'm like, well, why don't we book some smaller trips? Let's do like an overnighter or a few overnighters, not too far from home. But, if you go all the way out to the Yukon or Alaska and you're in the middle of nowhere, there's no cell phone service and your bike breaks down and you're 60 kilometers from anybody and there's grizzly bears and whatever else out there, and you're just stranded and you don't know how to fix your bike. You don't know how to diagnose the problem, and you're ill prepared because you didn't bring enough food or water. You put yourself in a bad situation. But if you're in a place where you're maybe 5 kilometers away from society, I mean, that's a hike back into town. That's reasonable. That's doable. You're not going to die out in the middle. And also people could probably find you. That's what I'm saying, right? So I don't know if any of that lands with you, if you have anything. I feel like this plays into art. I feel like it plays into everything. But I wanted to share that.
Well, the word that sort of ties together, at least in my mind, a lot of the things that you're saying is something that I'm a big believer in, which is simplicity. Like I think that the more we can simplify things, the more we thrive. And I'm not the first person to say that. Many philosophers will say, you look at a lot of like Henry David Thoreau, and lots of, have said basically, if you want to learn how to live well, learn how to live simply, right? How can you strip back all the things that are unnecessary? And there's a lot of things of complexities that our society and culture presents, right? That sometimes we think we actually have to participate in them, and you don't actually have to. There's a lot of things we think we have to participate in, certain elements of the rat race, if you will, that you actually don't have to get involved with, right? And so I think that that's a big part of it is, and you were saying like with the New Year's thing, like I see this all being connected to that as well, where it's like, well, there's all of these things. And it's like, and in my head, I go, well, what are all of those things actually about? Right? Can we find out what all of these many, many things spread out here? And yeah, may you key in on some of these things that are really important, but like, what is this actually really about? Because yeah, you can make these huge lists that they become really untenable. Like they're just, you can't even approach them, and they become so daunting. But what is the simple thing that you can do? And that's to me is also a great rule in art. It is one of our artist laws, right? Simplicity. And I always like to think of simplicity is that like if you really take care of the simple things, the complexities sort themselves out. The complexities start to emerge, right? And I can, just to bring this into acting and my background there is one of the things I started to learn about acting and as I was training in Meisner and stuff like that was as I really learned how to listen and just respond to what's going on, trust what was happening instead of trying to control it and manipulate it and direct it with all of these ideas that I had about what I thought would make it interesting and, all this shit that actors and artists do in their own respective ways in their crafts. And what I learned was like, oh, when I just take care of doing these simple things here, all of this interesting behavior starts coming out of me. Like people start saying, it's like, oh man, you did this thing, or you did like there was this moment and the way you said this. And it's like, I wasn't fucking thinking about any of that. Yeah. It didn't even occur to me to think about doing that or saying that in that way or whatever. It's like, because there's no time to do that. Right. There was no time in order to do it. But if I was just focused on responding to the person in front of me and of course, taking all of the sort of work that I was doing about understanding my character with me, but just trusting that was there, trusting that I had that with me and that was all fueling and nourishing me underneath the surface without me having to, consciously, actively try and, throw it in everyone's faces, right? All of this stuff just starts to kind of come through without you having to do it, right? And but you still need to do the simple thing, right? Like you need to do the simple thing, but it's that thing that's like the catalyst for all of that complex stuff to come through, right? And so that's just something that I've observed about the creative process over time, is that, you know, like, and part of that's why I think it's so challenging for so many of us, because we live in a culture that kind of worships this ultra complex, complicated, you know, type of thing, right? We love it. There's like our intellects love to just kind of stew and pry apart and, you know, all of these little things. But, you know, and that's a fun thing to do, right? We do it a lot on this podcast, right? But that's in so many ways, that's its own thing, right? And where you have a lot of time to do that. But when you're in the act of creating something, you don't really have time to do it. You've just got to do the thing.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing the thing, you've got to make it simple. You've got to make it as simple as possible for yourself. And again, I think that moves across into all kinds of domains in our lives, right? It's like, what's the simple thing that's actually going to take care of a lot of these other little things for you?
You know, I think in the act of doing something, simplicity is essential, because if you're thinking about all these little things and you're getting, you know, away from the main thing that you're doing, you're going to underperform, or you're going to miss something that's like essential. Like when it gets to the actual, like, you know, I want to use this example because, like, when it gets to the actual driving the motorcycle to Alaska and the Yukon and doing that, like, it's going to go back to the basics. You know, you're on the road, stay focused, you know, like do all the little things that you do, you know, that you practice every day driving around, you know, don't grip too tight, you know, stay alert, you know, make sure you're hydrated, you know, all this type of stuff that you would do. Right. And now you're extending it for longer periods of time. You know, you might be riding for 200 or 500 kilometers at a time, or whatever might be happening. So, you know, in that time, like, you know, you're just going to have to extend your ability to do that, and you pay attention, you know. Something that I'm a little bit more interested in this is kind of like the preparation that goes into something, where, you know, when it comes to like patience, it's like, what are you doing while you're waiting is so important, you know. There's like something that I've been navigating through a little bit recently is just like, okay, well, I have this big vision, this goal, and I want to go do it. And like, theoretically, there's nothing stopping me from leaving today and going to do it. But let's like look at the situation. We're basically in the middle of winter. So how far am I really going to get if I was to leave today? You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, I'm hitting snow and ice, and it's like, okay. And then, you know, you're not are you going to be able to camp even a night? Would you even be able to survive a night outside? Like, forget about even getting to Alaska and the Yukon. Like, let's just say you go north a little bit. Could you even do it? Could you even do it where you live? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things like that. You go, okay, well, you know, so even if I had everything in place, I had the money, the gear, everything was all done, you know, the experience, everything's there, I still wouldn't leave today. It wouldn't make sense to do it, right? Like this is a summer, possibly spring, maybe early fall, late spring, maybe early fall type of thing that I'm going to be doing if I'm doing it on a motorcycle. So there's a window. And I think that there's a lot of things like that where we have these goals creatively. Like maybe you want to make a movie, maybe you want to create an album, maybe it's a painting, whatever it is. There's this time between where you're at and that thing actually manifesting, being real in what you want it to be. What are you doing in that time? How are you preparing yourself, and how are you setting yourself up? And I think something I've encountered throughout this experience, because I would say that this vision started to become, This vision started to become a reality probably a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, but I didn't really get on a motorcycle. At first it was like, I'm going to do it in like an RV or a van or, a bus turned into an RV. That's how it started. And then I got into motorcycling and I was like, I want to do it on a motorcycle. I don't know. It just seems really cool. And some other people have done it and I found it inspiring. So it's kind of, things change, things evolve as you live and you experience things. You go, okay, well, initially I wanted it to be this. I'd still be okay with it being an RV, but I'd want to do it again, like in a motorcycle. So let's just do it on a motorcycle and then we'll see where we're at. The point is that while you're waiting to get to your vision, you're changing, you're growing, you're evolving, you're finding new awarenesses. And this is the point that I want to make. Something I've become acutely aware of is that you need to have faith in your vision during that time. Because if you start to doubt, if you start to go, well, maybe it'll never happen, you start to let those thoughts seep in, then you're going to stop doing the things that you need to do to prepare for it. So if you have a vision, and maybe this is advice, but I would tell anybody, like, if you have a vision, start living like it's going to happen today. Even if you're like, it's so far away, it's so far out of reach, I don't know if it'll ever happen. You have to live as though it's going to happen. It's the only way you're ever going to manifest these visions. And I see people all the time, they walk around, they don't have purpose, they get depressed. I've seen so many people get discouraged about their things and they're like, well, I really want to do this, but I don't know. You have to live like it's going to happen. You just have to. And you're going to find out along the way that like, it's not going to go as smoothly or as perfectly as you like. But when I come back to this simplicity thing you're talking about, every day, just simply, what can I do today that's getting me a little bit more ready to step into this vision that I have, And I'll say one last thing on this thought. Motorcycling is actually kind of an expensive hobby. Like people, if you get into it and you want to go do adventures, there's all these like little costs that come in, right? Like gear, preparing for different weather conditions, making sure you're set up that way, testing that stuff out. If you're camping, you got to get that gear. Also carrying the luggage on your bike, all that stuff, right? So something I've been doing is I've been just going, okay, well, like, this is like making a movie. It's like, what's my budget on the low end? What's the bare minimum I need to make this happen? And then if I'm luxury and I really get some nice things, like what's that going to look like? And I can kind of work that out now. So I have like, I have kind of my, okay, this is kind of like bootstrapping it. This is just getting by. It's not great. It's going to be roughing it a little bit. And then I go, well, could I upgrade this thing a little bit and have a little bit more luxury here, or have a little more luxury there? And you don't know how your life's going to change over the time between now and when this thing happens. So what seems out of reach today might be perfectly within reach tomorrow. So you just have to go about today going, okay, well, I'm going to do what I can today. And I think another thing that's really important, and I think the law of vision comes into this a lot, because it's another one of our laws, is I don't know what's possible tomorrow. But what if it's something more than what I think is possible today? And I think that's a really important part of this process too, is like, regardless if it's riding a motorcycle to Alaska or stepping as an actor into a scene, you don't know what's possible. You have in your mind what you think is possible to happen, but you have to step in going like, and then there's all this other possibility that I don't know, and it could happen, and I have to be open for it to present itself to me.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest parts of the creative aspect, and it is that unknown element, which is actually the thing you want. Yeah. Like you want that sort of controlled accident to a degree. You want those surprises and those things, because that's where kind of where you come to life. That's where you feel most alive. And one of the things, just as you were talking, that it really stuck out to me. I've known you for a long time now, and it's how things can change, because you going on a motorcycle adventure trip through Alaska like that, maybe it was somewhere in in the back recesses of your mind somewhere. But that wasn't really something that you ever talked about until, I don't know, last couple of years, right? Because you found something. There's something that you experienced in your life, which was, how much, you enjoy riding motorcycles, and that's become like a new passion, right? And that there's always these things that enter into our lives in all of these kinds of, sometimes, through the back door, the side door kinds of ways, right? And they just suddenly grab you, and it changes the course of your life in all kinds of really magical ways that you couldn't have planned for, right? You couldn't have necessarily seen it coming. And I think that was something else that came across my mind at some point during this conversation. And I'm pretty sure I've said it on the podcast before. But one of my favorite philosophers, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and it was like a audience member at like one of his talks or lectures, asked him like, hey, what's the difference between you and me? Right? Like, what's the biggest difference between you and me? And his response was, I don't mind what happens. And I thought, like, what a peculiar kind of thing, like a very unexpected answer in and of itself, at least for me. I was just went like, what a strange thing to say to that. But then thinking about that, even just for a moment, but it's something that I continue to like come back to. And it's like, yeah, that's a game changer. Like if you go through your life in a way where it's like, you don't mind the things that happen, right? There's a certain kind of freedom that occurs there that allows you to roll with the punches and have patience for certain things. Because it doesn't mean, that this is what, and I'm not going to, I can definitely say that like I'm no near the sort of the mental clarity of someone like Krishnamurti had, as far as I can gather. But right, there's a sort of a patience that can emerge in terms of when things, it doesn't mean that you stop going for certain things, right? This is something that is often said, like a lot of people think that, oh, if I just become a person who's, in the now all the time, or, if I become a person who just doesn't mind, whatever's happening in the moment and stuff, that I will just cease to be a person who does things in the world. And as far as what I can understand from the wisdom teachers is that that's not the case, right? It's like and that actually what emerges from that space is actually very authentic action in your life, very clear, authentic action in terms of the things that you do, right? And then the things that don't necessarily manifest and come to fruition in the moment immediately and those kinds of things, well, it's not a problem, right? And when it's not a problem, it doesn't, you don't get worked up about it, right? And you remove a sort of barrier and you can get on with being creative in your pursuits, right? As opposed to being like, why is this happening? Is this ever going to happen? And, it's just like that kind of shit that we do to ourselves. And you can get on with taking creative action. It's like, okay, this happened. And also this thing happening very often is a gift in and of itself. Like you were mentioning how it's like, if you had gone out and done this trip initially in the time that you were thinking you wanted to do it, you would probably have gone extremely underprepared, which, when you're out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, where the distances between gas stops or communities or whatever can be massive, right? Like that is potentially life-threatening situations. So I mean, there are the ways in which when things don't work out in the way that we want them to or think that they should work out, that it's an absolute gift. And most of us can probably, if we're being honest with ourselves and think through our lives, we can probably say it's like, oh yeah, there was a few things that's like, I'm so glad that thing did not happen when I wanted it to, because that would have blown up in my face. There's these strange gifts that happen, and it's sometimes it's a bit mysterious as to why that happens.
Like this conversation is reminding me a lot of how we talk about the journey that you're on, and, the way of the artist, right? It's like, it's not the destination of the artist, it's the way. It's like, it's finding that way. And it's interesting when it comes to motorcycles, because motorcycles, I would say probably for the last 10 or 12 years, they were something that they were like this curiosity, and maybe even longer than that. But I remember thinking like over a decade ago, I remember thinking like, I don't know if I want to get a bike. I mean, I don't really know anybody who rides, and, and I don't know if I'd like to do it alone. Turns out I love doing it alone. But at the time, these were justifications of why I just didn't go and do it. And then I went through this certain phase in my life where I was like, it's just not worth the risk, like, what if I get hurt? It's not worth the risk, and so I shoved it aside again. And what ended up happening was a few years ago, I really got curious about this whole schoolie movement, which is when people take a school bus, an old school bus, turn it into an RV, and they make it kind of their home, or at least they make it kind of their summer getaway, house type of thing. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I don't know, like it's creative, it's kind of artistic. You get to design the thing. It's kind of badass. It's a cool little community. And you're free, and I was very nomadic at that point in my life. I didn't really have a place where I felt like was home, and I was moving around a lot and trying different things and going to different places. I was like, well, what if I just had a vehicle and I could just, I want to live over here, I'll drive over there and I'll do that. And then I want to do it, so that was the idea. And then I stumbled across this guy who had a dual sport, like basically a dirt bike attached to the back of his. And he's like, yeah, I'll park here and I'll get off and I'll take the bike into town. I'll grab some food, bring it back, and it can extend my stay a little longer. And this also helps me so I don't have to move the thing around so much. And I was like, that's a pretty good idea. I'm like, well, why don't I get a bike, on the back of the thing? And that was the whole thing. It was the only thing. And I wasn't even going to get a motorcycle license. I was going to get like a little, like either a scooter or like, an electric bike or something like that. And I started to look into this and I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense. And then it started to be like, well, I guess I should just, if I'm going to do this, I should probably just get a motorbike. Okay. So then I was like, well, maybe I'll just get my motorcycle license. Cause, and so I had this bus that I was going to buy. Like it was a great deal. It was a 20-foot bus. The guy wanted about $5,000. It was a little bit, at the time, it was just like, yeah, I got to get some money together. Got to get this figured out. And I was coming into Vancouver, and I wasn't living in Vancouver, but that's where it was. And I was coming into Vancouver and I was like, hey, well, if it sells while I'm here, then it's not meant to be. And I'll just kind of like leave it to the gods, kind of idea. Right. And sure enough, well, I came to Vancouver, and we were in talks for a little while. Right. Like, and I told him, look, if someone comes along and they're just going to buy it, just sell it. I'm not going to hold you up. But I'm coming to town. We'll see what happens, And then sure enough, someone came along and bought it. And I was like, hey, it's not meant to be. And so I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm not going to buy that. And I was still kind of going down the road of getting my motorcycle license. So I was like, well, I might as well get this while I'm here. Then it turned out that I loved motorcycling so much. I was like, well, I don't even need the bus anymore because I just want a motorcycle. And I ended up kind of finding a place to live that I felt like, oh, this could be home. So I was like, well, that kind of is satisfied. So then motorcycling just kind of became more of the focus. You know what I mean? And the reason why I share this is that the vision didn't really change, but the means in which I was going to go achieve it and accomplish it and do it, and the way it changed and I changed and things changed in the dynamic of it. And this is kind of like where the unknown comes in, and how there's no way I could have predicted that. in hindsight, you look back and it almost looks obvious, but there was a natural progression. It was like, well, if I'm gonna get this bus and I'm gonna make it into a home, I don't want to have to move it every single time. So it would be good to have some type of means just to go into town and make that easy. And and there's this natural progression. It's just like, this makes sense. Well, let's do this. And so you don't really know what's going to happen. And this whole thing, to bring this back further, those times when I was kind of going like, oh, like, I don't know if I want a motorcycle alone. I don't know if that would be fun. First of all, I love doing it alone. I do it all the time alone. I think it's my favorite activity. But I have made more friends since I got a motorcycle than any other time in my life, because even today, I just went down to go grab some beers for the podcast and a guy pulls up on his bike and I saw him. He came and parked next to me on purpose because he saw I was on a bike, and he got off and he's like, hey, just got on my bike. He's like, 2 weeks ago, he's like, I'm super pumped to get back on. I'm like, oh, were you riding through the winter? He's like, no, I wasn't. I was like, oh, I was doing all season. He's like, oh, sweet. He's like, I want to do that next year. And I don't know this guy from anything. Yeah. But we have motorcycles, and all of a sudden we're so fucking pumped about it. And like, and like, I'm also working as a server right now. And I had a guy come in, and him and his wife, a little older fellow. And, I'm serving him and we're talking, and he's like, oh, how long ago do you move to the coast? I'm like, oh, I moved here like a year and a half ago. And he's like, yeah, and I got a bike and I ride up and down. He's like, you got a bike? He's like, what kind of bike you got? And like, we start talking. He's like, and then after he's done, he comes up, he's like, shows me a picture of his. He's like, oh, I'm like, is that a Triumph? He's like, yeah, it is. He's like, I bought it new. He's like, I've taken care of it. It's like my baby, it's just like, and it's just awesome because there's this quality, this community. And when I was looking at the whole schooly thing, that's kind of what I was after. I was after the lifestyle of that nomadic quality, but I was also after a community that was passionate and excited about what they did. And I think this is the thing that people don't really realize when they get into something. Say you're like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to be an actor. All of a sudden you're going to realize there's all these other people that fucking love acting too. And you're going to make all these friends. And then all of a sudden you're going to be out hanging out with them, having a great time. And you're going to be like, you're not even going to realize like that opens up a world that's so unexpected. And yeah, you got into it because you're passionate about that thing. But that's the great thing about being passionate about something. It opens up a community. And like, like I will go to Alaska, and barring anything like any major health injury or anything like that, I mean, it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. But I mean, maybe in the meantime, maybe I'm going to meet some other people that want to do that trip too. And maybe it becomes a group thing. Maybe it's not a solo ride there. Maybe it's a few people who go. I don't know. The point is that, I think what's interesting about this conversation is that you just take a step into the direction which you want to go, and you don't worry so much what it's going to look like 10 steps down the road. You just take that step you're going to take today, but like, you don't know who you're going to be and what's going to be around you, who you're going to know, how your perception is going to change, how your view of things is going to change 10, 20, 30, 100 steps down the road. So you just got to kind of go day by day and go, okay, well, this is what I'm doing today. And all of a sudden it takes one person, you meet them, and then it opens up your world into something else entirely.
Yeah, I think that you bring up, to me, a great point that it's impossible to know what that step 10 steps down the line is, right? Like, or what the situation is going to look like in this time from now, which is, like there is a value that I do understand and have some appreciation for in terms of, like a lot of exercises and activities that people do. It's like, okay, well, where are you going to be at this, in this long and this long and this long? And, like I think that can be a good, what's the word for it? It's like a good, I don't know. It's an exercise. Hopefully the word will come to me, but like it can be an interesting exercise in terms of it opening certain things up for you, of like, oh, okay, like what are some of the things that I actually really want? What are, because when we reframe the things that we want or the directions that we want to go in different ways, it can sometimes shed new light, help us to uncover things that we maybe didn't totally understand, right? And that's the value that I see. But in terms of it becoming this thing of like, this is where I'm going to be and this is what's going to happen, it's like, well, then you don't know how life works, right? Like, because that's not how life, like we are so, like, it's one of the things about who we are, like not just as individuals, but as a humanity, like we aren't able to see actually that far into the future, and in many cases, it's very dicey that we can even see very far into like a close period of time, right? Walk into like getting yourself all hyped up thinking that this conversation that you're going to have with this person, in an hour is going to turn into a big thing. And next thing you know, they just go, you know what? I hear you and I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. You go, oh shit, I came ready for a fight. Yeah. You can't even see an hour in front of you, let alone it's like, well, let's see, this is what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. This is where I'm going to be. I mean, maybe, like, I don't know, but like I think that there's an element to that sort of thing that we do to ourselves that not even implies, like it tries to assert a level of control that we just don't have, right? That it's like, it doesn't exist. You don't have that level of control over life for that thing to happen exactly in that way. But maybe there'll be something resembling that. Yeah. Or maybe that thing sends you on a path that leads you somewhere completely different. Mm-hmm. That's even better. Mm-hmm. That's something that you never even thought of, but had you not gone in that direction, you wouldn't have discovered that it was actually this other thing all along. Yeah. Right? As classic sort of stereo story, trope kind of a thing, right? But yeah, I think that's one of the things where it's like you don't know. And I think that we need to leave more room there. And like I was saying before, it's like, and we actually want the unknown. There's a part of us, of our being that like we really crave it. There's a part of us that's really terrified of it too. Mm-hmm. Right. But there's a part of us that really wants it because that's where we find life. We find life in the places that we don't control. Mm-hmm. Right. And the things that were unexpected things happen because again, if we actually had say over everything, if we actually had godlike powers like that, like we would destroy ourselves with boredom, right? Like we would just like, because if you could just always have everything that you wanted in exactly the way you wanted it, and there was no challenge, adversity, or complete, things that totally blindside us, like life would be so uninteresting, mm-hmm. right? And so we actually want those surprises, and we actually want that element in which we don't have control over.
I also want to say that, like a 5-year, 10-year, 1-year plan, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It's just more like you don't know the way in which it's going to happen and how it's going to play out. And also, you don't know if that's the end of the story. I feel like there's a lot of times where we have visions or goals and we go like, once I get this, everything's going to be good. It's like, you don't even know. Like you've no idea. Like that might be like the thing that leads you to the next thing, to the next thing, the next thing. And also there's these interruptions that happen in life. Like if you would have talked to me when I was 29 or 28, I would have told you, this is where I'll be at 35. This is what's going to happen. This is what my life's going to look like. I was pretty sure. Definitely really fucking wrong. Because the things that happened between 29 and 35, like over those 5-6 years, were so like, okay, go ahead.
Just a quick thing I want to say. It's like, how many of us had lots of big plans at the end of 2019?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, great example, right? And so, but the thing is if these unexpected twists and turns didn't occur, I wouldn't have these certain values or shifts that are in my life, And there's a part of me that is like, oh man, if only things could have just gone to plan. There is a part of me, and it's like this part of me that's almost hanging on to something like this old version of me, as though that but it's like you forget that the version of you that you grew past had limitations or blocks or traumas or whatever else was inside of you, and those things get ironed out, they get worked out. And I've said this a lot on the podcast. I mean, I'll say it again. I don't think it can be said enough, honestly, is that you need to have a mindset of a champion and not the mindset of a victim. If you have the mindset of a victim, you might as well sign yourself up for depression, sign yourself up for, just weakness and a lackluster, boring, unfulfilled life. There are no victims that live fulfilled lives. And I'm talking about a victim mindset. That we are victims of all sorts of shit. There's people that come along and they do terrible shit and we're a victim to that. That happens. That's a reality. But your mindset of, I'm a victim, poor me, here's my victim story, here's my sob story, this is my sad, reason why I'm sad, this is why I justify why I don't do what I want to do in my life. That's victim bullshit. The champion says, you know what? Yeah, this fucking happened and it really hurt. It really hurt. This is what I learned and this is what I'm doing now. And this is what I'm doing because of it. And this is how I've evolved. And this is how I changed. And this is how it served me. And, I'll admit there are moments in my life where, I was caught in the victim mindset and I didn't want to be, and I knew better. So if you're listening on the other side of this podcast, don't think that I'm judging you, because I absolutely get it. Like, listen, I've shared this on the podcast. I got depressed for a while. That's a total victim move. Like, to get depressed, you have to be in the victim mindset. It's the only way you can do it to yourself. And there's a part of you that just goes, well, I don't know how to be a champion. I don't know how to have the champion mindset. And, all I can say is that I get that too. And you just got to believe that it's possible. And like, if you don't, like I'm living proof. I am living proof. Because I remember looking at videos of myself when I was in the deep of my depression, and just the fucking vacantness in my eyes and the lack of it's just like there was so little energy, and just something was gone. And I was like, oh man, like, I wonder if I've lost it. I wonder if that life will ever come back again. And, it's back now, and it's almost hard to even remember a time when it wasn't there, but I do remember it. And I try to remember it simply because I'm proud that I got through it. I'm proud that I overcame it. And I think I visited it partially so I can help others get out of that valley. I think that part of my life journey was that I went through that valley of the shadow of death so that I could come out the other side and I could wave the other people on and say, listen, there's a fucking mountain on the other side of this dark, grimy, dirty fucking valley you're in, and just keep going, keep trekking through the mud, keep going, just keep your head up. Don't worry about these assholes that do this to you. Don't worry about the world that did this to you. Don't worry about it. Just keep moving, focus on who you want to be, what you want in your life, and what you want to do. And, and at that time, I'll just, the best thing I could do some days when I was in the darkest part of my life was I would get up and I'd play some video games. And the thing is like, I was walking around asking questions like, what's the point of life? Why am I even here? What does it even fucking matter? Who gives a shit? And I was saying stuff like that. And I was like, well, video games are fun, and maybe I'll just get up and I'll play some video games. And it's kind of nice to go out for a meal every now and then and have some bacon and eggs at the local cafe. So I guess, I'll go do that. And, I just did little things that I thought were kind of enjoyable. And like, I was so far away from taking a motorcycle adventure to Alaska, so fucking far away from making a movie or living my dream again. but the thing is that all of a sudden, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden you're out of it, and that valley is just a distant memory. And you might visit it from time to time. You might find yourself back in another one, and you just go, well, I was here before and it passed, so this one will pass. And sometimes it lasts a little longer than you want. Sometimes it lasts a day. Sometimes it lasts a few days. Sometimes you might even find you're kind of in a bit of a funk for a few weeks. You're like, what the fuck? I just want to get out of this shit. You're just like, yeah, but you know what? One foot in front of the other. Just keep moving forward. There is no forever valley. There just isn't. There's always, like every wave, there's a crest, and there's a top and there's a bottom. What's the other top? The trough or whatever, right? Like there's always going to be a high and a low. And if you're in a low, you feel like it'll last forever. And when you're in a high, you never feel like it'll last enough because you like it, right? And the fear of losing it starts to, eventually come in. I think the thing is that you're going to go through highs and lows on a journey towards a vision or a goal. And you want to have those ups and downs. You don't want it to just be this flat line. You don't want that as much as you think you do, and much as you think you want the predictability and consistency. The moment you start to get that, you're actually going to create chaos in your life, because we're not designed for that. And someone like me who likes adventure, and I don't even think I'm the most adventurous person, but I do like adventure. If you say you like adventure, then you're saying, I want a little chaos in my life. I want a little bit of unexpected. I want a little bit of the unknown, because that's what an adventure is. Yeah. So you're asking for that. And then all of a sudden you get it and you're like, oh, why the hell did this happen to me? But the truth is, you got to learn to take it in stride, and that Krishnamurti quote, like you're saying, or that, well, it doesn't matter to me what happens. I mean, that's really the truth. Is like, you want your life to be an adventure, and then the more you can be okay with whatever happens, the more your life can be an adventure. I think that's the wisdom he's really sharing.
Yeah, an adventure that you can enjoy a little more often. And just to what you were saying too, it's like, yeah, like there's always, it can be hard to see it, but that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, for those difficult moments, right? And it can be very hard because you usually again, you don't know what that even looks like. You don't know what that light at the end of the tunnel is, because if you knew what it was, you just, you'd go there, you'd be there, you would do the thing, right? And it comes down to, like what you were saying, coming back to, where it seemed to me like at least at the start of this conversation it's like, it's simplicity, right? You were talking about, well, what were the things that start to get you out of your depression? What were some of those things? Like, oh, it was, just getting up, playing some video games, going and getting a meal, going grabbing a coffee. Maybe, I knew you at the time, so it was like, like meeting up with me here. That just so often, and I've heard this thing too. I'm like with breakups and stuff like that, and people are just devastated. I remember a buddy who was just like, went through a breakup and was so devastated, and was like, well, I signed up for like a month of unlimited at my yoga studio. And he's just like, and I'm just going every day. Like, I'm just like, every day it was just like, I'm going to yoga. Like, that was, like they were coming to work and all that stuff too, because that's how I knew him, was from, like, we worked together. But it was like their thing at that time was just like yoga. I'm going to yoga every day. And that one thing. And, I don't remember what it was, but eventually they just started to kind of come out of this darkness, to come out of the clouds, right? Where just certain awarenesses start to come through, there's clarity starts to emerge out of these events, right? And that's simplicity, right? Again, it's just doing simple thing that's right in front of you. And, you know, in many ways, it's like that vision, that the grand vision that you have is something that just kind of gets you out the door, right? Like it's something that gets you moving. It gets you taking some kind of action. But again, that action is the thing that's right in front of you. It's just that simple thing, you know, because it usually is. Whatever's right in front of you is usually a fairly simple thing to do, right? When you take the thing as a whole, right? It, you know, if you showed it to somebody as a whole, we'd go like, whoa, holy shit, that's crazy, right? You would go like, that's so complex. But when it is like in process, which is another one of our laws, right? Simplicity and process, when those things come together, it creates this incredible tapestry of things, right? And creates this incredible, you know, mosaic of small actions, which are a brush stroke, which are a tile, you know, in this image that's being created. Only we don't exactly know when we set out what image is going to be created. We might think we know what image we're setting out to create initially, but what it's going to come out is going to be something a little bit different. But it's going to be, there's still going to be elements that are like the thing that you set out to do, right? But there's going to be all this other stuff that's in there. And I promise you, you'll look at that image and you'll say, it's like, oh man, I can't imagine that thing not happening. I didn't plan on that thing happening. At the time, I didn't want that thing to happen, but it happened. And now it's part of the beauty of the thing. Right. And that's, you know, and, you know, we talk about story a lot here, right? How, like, no story would be beautiful without the difficulty, without the struggle that occurs within it. Otherwise, it's just like, who gives a shit, right? It's like, well, this is what I really want. Here you go. The end. What was the point of that shit? Like, again, like the reason like why it's comical and insulting and why it would just be the worst thing ever is not just because it's like struggle is it's not like some sick thing where it's like we need struggle and we want struggle. It's because it's a part of life. You know, challenge and struggle and pain is a part of life. So to ignore that element is to be completely ignorant to life and humanity and all of those things, right? So it's a very peculiar thing that we do to ourselves, that we kind of demand things to go perfectly of ourselves. And, you know, like, it's like, no, like, it's like, again, it's not possible. That is an impossible thing that you set upon yourself. It's an incredible amount of pressure. It's going to be crushing every single time something doesn't go to plan. And also, if you're paying attention to the things that don't go to your plan, they're actually something really extraordinary and beautiful, right? Another thing that I recently heard from a Krishnamurti talk was he was talking about pain and suffering, and didn't say like a whole, like, getting too deep into it, but he made this comment. He's like, hold that in front of you like a precious jewel. Like, look at it like a precious jewel. You're like the things that are of pain and suffering, because there is color and light, and there's so much beauty and richness and wisdom and things that is contained in that thing. So you have to cherish it, you know, like you said, hold it like a precious jewel, you know, and most of us are just trying to chuck it away, right? We're trying to get this thing, fucking get rid of this thing, right? But instead, hold it like it's something that's precious and look at it, like, just, and really look at it and really be with it, right? But that's how many of us are doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you don't know what you don't know what you're doing and where it's leading and what's going to happen. I mean, it really is amazing when you, like, for example, to come back. So, I don't know. It's thinking about sharing. It's just like, so, um, when I was, when I was looking to get the bus, my brother was like, well, if you're coming down here, why don't you stay at my place and we'll do, because what he and I often do is we ride the bikes and we ride downtown and then we do the brewery tour. And we just ride our bikes, we grab beer at this brewery, that brewery, and ride over. We sit down at some places and we do the seawall, and then we grab some brews on the turn and come back, and then we do this big whole thing. And on this particular trip, he's like, well, I got to go to the dentist while we're out. It's going to only take me an hour. But he's like, I'm like, I don't care, whatever. You go see the dentist. He's like, okay. He's like, I'll just grab a coffee at the local cafe nearby, wherever it is, and I'll sit down. I'll have a latte, chill out. Something I like to do anyway. When you're done, come meet me, and we'll carry on. So sure enough, that's what he does. And a friend that I hadn't seen in like, I don't know, like 12, 15 years or whatever. I think I knew her for like 15 years, and I hadn't seen her in, I don't know, like 10. And she comes walking by and she's like, Brandon? And I was like, hey, how's it going? And we started chatting. And then we're like, well, like I was living in, I wasn't even living in the city, and nor was she. It just so happened that we were there and we crossed paths. So then while I was in town, we hung out a few times, and then we reconnected. And, it's, become probably one of the most important relationships in my life now. And the thing is that it all happened because I thought, you know what, I should go see this bus down in Vancouver. And while I'm there, I should hang out with my family. And so why don't my brother and I do our little bike tour? And he just so happens to have a dentist appointment. And so I'll stop at this cafe, which is next to his dentist, which is where she was. And then, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's fucking so serendipitous. And like, you talk about this stuff and it's like, well, this is the shit that's written in movies and novels and stuff, but this is just, that's life. So you don't know what is happening. Like, you don't know the pieces that are coming together, and, you don't know what's happening. I mean, I think that's the key thing here. And it's like, I really think that it's important though, for every person to just pick your thing that you're doing, and go for that. And, I haven't really been thinking, like, I still think about the schoolie bus, like, and, I dabble a little bit and look into it a little bit here and there. And I go, yeah, okay, because it's still something I still kind of want to do one day. Like, I still want to get one and build it. It's just not as much of a priority to me now. But, if I wasn't so focused on that, and also when that bus came up, I remember it came up on the marketplace, and I didn't even have the money to buy it. And I remember when I messaged the guy, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write him a letter. I'm just going to write him. And I'm just going to say, listen, I don't have the money to buy this. I'm trying to get my shit together. This is where I'm at right now. And, I just want to let you know, blah, blah, blah. I just want to make contact and talk. Sure enough, it starts to open up this conversation. I actually got the bike. I got him to take it into a mechanic. They did a whole assessment on it. Like, I was getting really committed to buying it. Right. And it was one of those things where it's like, and remember, I still had to buy the bus, and then I had to put it wasn't just buying the bus, like, cause buying the bus was one thing. I could do that, but then I had to also put these other things into it, cause then I just owned a bus, but I had to like build the thing too. Right. So I'm budgeting that out, and I'm finding like ways to do it. I'm literally studying mechanics in my spare time. I'm studying plumbing. I'm studying carpentry. I'm studying all this shit in my spare time because I'm so dead set on getting this bus and building this schoolie RV project that's what I was about. Right. And, it almost doesn't even matter that it didn't happen. No, it doesn't matter that it didn't happen. It doesn't. It just doesn't matter. it got me to here. And the thing is this is the hard thing about a vision and a goal is when you have that initial vision and goal, you get so dead set on these things. You think, what's the point? Like if you were told this isn't going to happen, you'd be like, well, what's the point of me even caring about it? Because you don't know what the point is. That might be leading you to something that's more important, but you don't care about that right now. And you can't see that yet because right now, all you can care about is this. So I'm going to bring it back and just kind of full circle. Depression, video games. So what? You get up and you play some video games. So what? You get up, you go have a coffee down the street. You're depressed and that's what you did for the day. That's the most important thing to you in the day. So what? That's what matters to you right now. You don't know what's going to matter to you tomorrow. All of a sudden, you're going to go to the cafe, you might meet somebody there, or, you run to an old friend or something happens. And then all of a sudden, it opens up a new area of interest for you. And then that's what's important to you. But you just have to do what you have to do that day. And like when you're depressed, like you don't even want to get out of bed. Like, and I don't think I'm just speaking for myself. I think most people can relate to this who have ever experienced this. You just everything feels so fucking pointless. So he's like, what's the point of even getting up? What's the point of even eating? What's the point of even doing any of this shit? So you just go, okay, well, I'm just going to go do this thing. I'm just going to go do it. And then you go do that. And then, and maybe nothing happens and maybe do it again and nothing happens. Nothing really spectacular happens. But it's what you do and it gives you some routine and it gives you something to do. And then all of a sudden, then something spectacular happens. And all of a sudden, you have a little bit, another breath of life into you, and then you're on to your next thing, And it's not just like the same thing goes for somebody who's doing well in life and you're just knocking out of the park in life. All of a sudden you have a vision and then all of a sudden you're really knocking out of the park in life. Like things can happen, right? And also you could be, the other thing too is I want to throw one other thing into this pile that I'm building. You could be rocking it in life and you think, I'm set. Everything's so great. My life's so wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, something fucking terrible happens. Something totally unexpected, devastating, rocks your world happens, shakes up everything you think you had, you took for granted. And then you're like, why? Why did this happen to me? And you don't know that that's a gift too. You don't know that that is a part of the whole thing. And it doesn't feel like a gift when it happens. No fucking way it feels like a gift. Because if, certain things happen, you're just like this, you just think, man, you're just unlucky. You just think it's the worst ever. But it's your journey and it's bringing you somewhere and you're becoming something. And it's really hard to see in the moment. It really is, because and I'll give a couple examples just to give context. All of a sudden, your partner wants to divorce you. All of a sudden, your partner dies. All of a sudden, your child dies. All of a sudden, you lose your job. All of a sudden, the fucking pandemic happens or some shit, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just something happens. It shakes everything up in the way you expect it. And things were just moving along the way you wanted them to move along. And it's just, you get in a car accident. Who knows? So the thing is you just got to kind of like, you got to try to have a champion mindset, and you're gonna fall. I think something I've learned, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I think one thing is something I've learned about the victim mindset versus the champion mindset. I always want to be in a champion mindset. I never want to be in a victim mindset, and I get really frustrated and upset with myself when I find myself slip into a victim mindset, even if it's only temporarily. But something I've kind of learned and come to peace with is that you have to sometimes slip into the victim mindset. Because what happens, I think, when you do is you're realizing a limitation in your growth and your personal development is just, you haven't built that yet. So whenever you slip into a victim mindset, it's actually a natural stage of your psyche saying, hey, you need to grow. The old you sees this as victimhood, but the new you is going to champion this. The new you is going to look back at this and see how this raised you up, made you better, and how you built something on it. And it's not to justify the bad thing that happened and to say it was okay or any of that. It's nothing to do with that. But life moves on and you need to move on with life. And I think that's so much about what we're talking about is like, your life journey is going to demand things of you. And it's not just going to demand things of you, it's going to demand things of your family members, it's going to demand things of your friends, of your children, of your parents. It's going to demand things all the time. And life is always going to demand things of us because it's designed to make us great. I truly believe it's designed to make us great beings. And when your family is going through pain, see that, even that, as something that's helping them to become a great being. Don't let them become a victim to their story. Be their champion. Encourage them, cheer them on. Tell them they're going to get through it, and that is building you too, right? Because every time you build someone else up, you're actually building yourself up. And if we live in a society that constantly, helps people raise up, raise their vibe, raise their vibration, raise their frequency, keep doing this, good things will happen. And we will be better for each other. And we're not without pain. People are going to die. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to hurt each other. This is going to happen. This is life. We're flawed. We're going to fumble. But we can be better. And I think the key thing is like, as we go through all this stuff, it's like, well, I can be better. I can be better than whoever I was yesterday. And then I can be better than the person I was today, tomorrow, and I'll just keep raising. And some days I'm going to feel like I'm falling behind and I fell back 10 steps and I'm 10 steps behind all the growth that I thought I did. But you don't even know if that's true. It just feels that way. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts that have been kind of bubbling underneath the surface. I know we're wrapping it up. That might be most of what I have to say. But do you have any thoughts on that before we share the beer?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love that you brought up, the fact that, you slip into, a certain sort of victim type of perspective and mindset about things. Because we're not perfect beings here. Believe it or not, that these podcasters here aren't perfect human beings and we're fallible and all that stuff. But yeah, we're totally, our propensity to, fuck shit up is just as high as anyone's. But what I appreciate about that is because when that happens, we find ourselves falling into these patterns of thinking, that do not give us a very good outlook upon ourselves and the world and these things that make us small. It's like there is an element to which it's like, okay, well, again, let's hold that like a precious jewel. Let's take a look at that. Right? Let's because there's some part of us there that's trying to speak to us and maybe say something very important, right? Maybe make us acknowledge something that we're trying to ignore, right? And sometimes that's a part of the process on becoming that champion, right? Is because usually because there's something that's not being listened to, right? Something that hasn't really been fully listened to. And until it gets that attention, that thing will continue to crop up, right? And so, like you were saying, yeah, it's an invitation for us to become better than we were, yesterday. And oftentimes that involves compassion. I haven't been for a while now. And I've been thinking about it, but it's like, I go and do some work with a somatic therapist from time to time. And she talks about it like you becoming a parent to yourself, you being an adult to yourself. And she sort of talks about, what the adult is, right? And in many ways, the adult is kind of the self that we want to be, right? And is calm, is compassionate, is kind, is curious, all of these things. And you bring these qualities to, that victim self that's coming out, right? And you say, it's like, oh, okay. What would you like to say to me? Right? As opposed to us becoming consumed by it, right? becoming overtaken by it, that we can be kind and compassionate to ourselves, right? And where that thing is coming from, because it's very, if you go into it, it's very understandable where that thing is coming from, right? So that's really all I had to say in regards to that. But we should probably wrap this one up. It's been an interesting chat. So let's quickly talk about this beer. Do you want to talk? You brought the beer, so I mean it's not a rule that the person who brought the beer has to say what it is, but you know, if you would like to, you can certainly be the one.
All right, Evan. This is from Tree Brewing. This isn't an ad. This is something we do whenever we have a podcast. We have a craft brew. It's from Tree Brewing, and it's called the Vertical Vanilla Ale. And, you know, it kind of tastes a little bit like, it reminds me of like a marshmallow. It says nutty with hints of vanilla and caramel. And the bevy should, it's hard to read, always be a part of the cold weather inventory. Yeah, I don't know. It's been nice. It's kind of like, I feel like it's almost a little bit like a dessert, but it's not so dominant that like I could probably have a couple of these, you know, and I'd still be good. I mean, a lot of the time, like I find really flavorful beers, they're like a one-off. Like I have one and then I'm good. This one is mild enough where I could probably have a couple and I'm enjoying it, but it is pronounced enough where it's like, yeah, I'm definitely kind of, I definitely feel like the flavor bomb, you know, of it. So yeah, no, it's been good. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, when I first saw it, it's like, ooh, I was like, a vanilla ale. I was like, this could be a little bit much, because I often find a lot of nut ales and stuff with kinds of flavors like that, like wintry types of beers. They can be a little tough for me, but this actually has gone down quite nice. I would probably call it at 1 though.
Yeah,
I probably would call it at 1 because but it's been a good one. Where very often it's like with beers like this, I'm like halfway through and I'm just like, I'm ready to be done with this one. So no, it's very good. It's very often like they taste very artificially. I think that's kind of, there's just something that's just like a not, but this has been really nice and kind of natural, gone down well. So, all right. Closing comments. I don't know. This has been an interesting conversation, man. Like this has gone in all kinds of different directions. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, starting out the year and setting out to achieve certain goals and simplicity and, you know, flowing with the moment and things changing and like, you know, like we've gone into all sorts of things in this conversation. And that's part of the thing that I love about this podcast and in general, the format of the podcast, is because this is, you know, it's like this. You can't sort of stick to a script in a podcast. And that's one of the things I love about it, you know, is like there is something that evokes the creative and artistic thing about it, is because like you just gotta respond and flow with it and see where it goes, and who knows what might come through at the end of it. But you show up, you know, with something in mind, and of hey, we're gonna try and just dive into some shit, you know, like really dive in and see if we can glean some kind of wisdom and insight into life and creativity and being a creative human being. And you know, these conversations are always worth it. You know, for me, like I don't think there's ever been a podcast we sat down. Well, there's one. there's one. I think you know the one I'm talking about too. It was a guest. It was a guest. And actually part of the issue with that one is that it was a guest who came in with a script. Yeah. Not literally a script, but came in with like an agenda of things they wanted to make sure was they said, and it just was weird. I won't say anything else about it, but yeah, like part of the thing that like I love showing up for these conversations just because of this, and in many ways that's so much the embodiment of a lot of things that we talked about in this episode, right? And there's something that's, we have a sort of idea, a direction of which this podcast is about, and we show up to explore that kind of territory, not knowing exactly where it's going to go. And we try and keep it simple. We stay present. It leads us in all kinds of different directions. Some of them are kind of dead ends. Some of the directions are, it's like, yeah, that was an interesting little thing. They're playful, and other times we strike some stuff that's really profound. Like maybe not for anyone listening, but maybe just for ourselves at times. But like there's something that's very real and genuine about that whole undertaking, right? And that's something, that I think that we can be proud of. I think that's something that we can hang our hats on to some degree, and that's something that we do it in this space, and I always hope that I bring more of what we do in this space into more of my life. So I don't know if that really what that really said about this episode, but those are my closing thoughts.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I feel like that's where this podcast came from. As you and I were thinking, hey, well, why don't we record some of these conversations so we could listen back? Because there were useful things that we felt like we shared with each other. And, the fact that we invite other people to come in and sit in on this conversation if they please is like, that's really what it's about. It's always kind of been that idea. And yeah, and I feel like we work some stuff out. I really do try not to give advice. There are some times where when I do give advice, like I feel like most of the time, if I'm giving direct advice, it's because I'm really just trying to give like one little tidbit of something that is like, hey, like no one shared this with me. Maybe this will help you. Like this is my point of view on it. And like maybe if someone who's listened for a while might, maybe have some trust, maybe you're willing to like try that out. But one thing I would say is like, of what we talked about, the law of simplicity and the law of vision came up quite a fair amount, and kind of the law of the unknown is actually another one. I felt like those were all very present in this conversation, and it's I think they all have a relationship to each other in a way, and maybe I'll wrap up with this thought is that if you like, there's probably some vision, something that you would like, something that you care about that would be, that would be cool, like something that'd be fun. I don't know, whatever. Like, I think it's worth exploring that, and and just like the moment you explore, like see what comes up. And I know this sounds like advice, but it's kind of like more like a guided way to look at this. So you set a vision, you say like, oh, I want to go to Alaska on my motorcycle, or I want to get like this score in my video game. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. I want to meet this person or have this type of person in my life, whatever. You have this vision. Immediately, the moment you start seeing yourself having this vision or trying to see yourself have this vision, what comes up? Because like, I bet there's all this shit that comes up, like, oh, it can never happen for me, blah, 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 things always go this way. Like, it's worth noting some of that stuff down and just going like, what's coming up? What's in my way here? Like, what are my thoughts that immediately object to this vision? And you probably find out if you actually wrote them down that most of them are nonsense. Most of them actually hold no weight whatsoever. And the moment you write them down, they want to run away right away. They're like, oh my God, this is so stupid. I can't even believe I wrote that down. But then there's these other ones that kind of like, they hit a little too deep. They hit a little deeper than you would like. You're like, ugh, I really feel like this is true. Well, that's the kind of stuff that you can go, well, if that's between me and this vision, is there a way to work that out? And I would say like 99.9% of the time, there is a way to work that out. And if there isn't, it's probably not something you should work out. It's probably something that actually you should accept and embrace and actually love about yourself. So like, that's like, I think a lot of people don't let themselves have visions because they don't want to deal with these intern feelings that are like gross doubt, like, you know, they make you face your insecurities and all the stuff that you have that you try to run away from and you try to hide from. All those insecurities and all those things that you like don't like about yourself, you don't accept about yourself, those are all the things that actually people are going to love about you. And I'm not saying everybody's going to love about you, but like the people who matter are going to love about you. Those are the things that are actually going to make you special. They actually are what make you special. And they're what make your voice unique, and they're what make the way you color the world. And if you're a painter, it'll come out in your art. If you're a musician, it'll come out in your sound, you know, it'll come out somehow in whatever you're doing. And so it's actually, the moment you create a vision, you're going to bring something out of yourself that you've probably been hiding from and running away from. And then if you could actually allow yourself to like deal with that and face that, like, I think a lot of good things will come out of that. And also this vision, here's the fucking wildest thing about all of this. This is, and if I could leave you with a thought, the thing that's stopping you from having the vision and the dreams is actually the most beautiful thing about you.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.